There is a place I return to when the gold of my crown grows too heavy, when the silence of palaces echoes louder than celebration. It isn't on any map, though I've traced it on parchment in the hush of early morning. It is where your eyes met mine the first time, unplanned, without ceremony, far from the painted halls of duty. I remember the sky more vividly than the fabric of my dress that day. It was shy blue, like your smile. We didn't speak at first, just let the hush between us make room for something ancient and unnamed. A breeze came through the olive trees and made a sound like applause from the universe. In that moment I wasn't air, I wasn't history. I was just a girl, and you were the only one who saw me. When we parted, time folded, and my hours were measured in thoughts of you. Royal calendars carried no mention of your name, but you were the footnote in every state dinner, the silent promise behind every handshake. How absurd to live in rooms of tapestries and portraits, and yet feel most alive when I remembered the warmth of your hand brushing mine. I held on to those seconds like they were diamonds, far more valuable than jewels passed down through generations. I wondered if you felt it too, the quiet tether we shared, invisible and unspoken but unbreakable. I wanted to ask you once during that hurried goodbye at the carriage, but instead I just nodded. It was the most honest thing I could do. My voice would have betrayed how much I didn't want to leave. You became the part of me I couldn't name aloud. I read history books beside a fireplace gilded in bronze and thought about how every queen must have had a secret. Maybe I was no different. Maybe love has always lived in the margins of crowns and scrolls. When I studied diplomacy, I wondered if loving you was a kind of rebellion, not one of swords or speeches, but of dreams. I dreamed of you constantly, of a version of us without protocol, walking barefoot on quiet shores, laughing at nothing. I would write letters I never sent, each word a thread tying my heart to something real. I folded them into books I was never allowed to read in public, as if hiding the truth would make it safer. But truth has a way of glowing, doesn't it? Even in silence, even in shadow. The world around me moved with rituals. I wore dresses chosen for me, spoke words prepared for me, and smiled in places where love was never meant to exist. But your memory walked with me through it all, like a whispered vow. When dignitaries offered me roses, I remembered the wild flower you gave me, bent, imperfect, and more precious than any bouquet. I wondered where you were then, if you still kept that drawing I gave you, the one of the two trees leaning into each other. I had drawn it after a dream, one where our roots met underground, hidden from the world, yet holding everything up. That image stayed with me, it still does. There are nights when the silence becomes unbearable, and I let myself cry, not out of sorrow, but because I dared to love in a world built on lineage. I'm told to think of the kingdom, of legacy, of duty, but what is a kingdom without love? Just stone and silence. I've read of kings who conquered nations and died alone. I fear becoming a statue before I have lived. I fear forgetting the softness of your voice when you whispered my name like a prayer, like I was something sacred. You made me real, not Princess Leonor, but simply Leonor. No title, no expectation, just a soul. That to me is the greatest crown I have ever worn. Do you remember the rain that evening in Segovia? We stood beneath the balcony, your jacket shielding me from the downpour, and laughed as the world seemed to vanish around us. I remember that laugh. It wasn't ladylike or practiced, it was loud, imperfect, and full of life. That sound was freedom. I've tried to find it since, but laughter in castles always seems quieter, like it fears being heard. You made joy feel effortless, and I've missed that more than I thought I could miss anything. When people speak of royal happiness, they don't know it comes in glimpses, small, quiet, easily lost. But that night was ours. It still lives in me, unshaken by time. Sometimes I think of us years from now. Will we meet again in some distant land, older, wiser, more careful? Or will we pass like strangers, brushing shoulders, hearts aching with all that was unspoken? I don't know which fate would hurt more. I don't pretend to have answers, but I know what we had was real. And sometimes in a life filled with rehearsed gestures, one truth is enough to carry you through. You were my truth. I hold on to that with a tenderness the world doesn't deserve to see. I let it bloom quietly in the corners of my heart. It's how I survived the gold and the ceremony. There are stories the press will never print. They will write about my education, my speeches, my travels. They will chart my rise like a weather pattern, predictable and polished. But they will never write about how I felt you with me as I walked into my first solo engagement. They didn't see the way I squeezed my fingers before waving, remembering how yours once held mine, grounding me. You weren't there, but I carried you like a talisman. You gave me courage, the kind that doesn't wear armor. They say royals are born brave. I say I became brave the moment I loved someone I was never supposed to. There is music I no longer listen to because it hurts too beautifully. The piano piece we danced to in that abandoned villa, the one you played by ear. It lives inside me now, each note a chapter we never finished. The melody still finds me sometimes, in dreams or through windows left ajar. When it does, I let myself feel everything, even if it breaks me for a while. To be broken by love is still a kind of grace. I would rather feel that ache than numbness. Even in heartbreak there's purity, and maybe that's what makes it worth it, the knowing that we were honest in a world that rarely is. I sometimes wonder if you think of me during those still moments just before sleep. Do you remember the way I traced your jawline with my fingertip, memorizing you like scripture? You laughed and told me I was impossible, but I needed to remember. My life was always meant to be public, documented in thousands of frames, but I wanted something only I could keep. And that was you. I learned every line of your face like a poem. Even now, when the lights go out and I stare at the ceiling in silence, I see you, and I pray, not for reunion, not for miracles, just for the strength to keep that love safe inside me. I've met others, of course, some charming, some sincere, but none could sit in the same space in my heart that you occupied without effort. I've smiled at princes and diplomats, but it was always a performance. None of them knew the girl who once sat on a hill at dusk, counting stars beside the boy she could never have. You knew her, you still do. That's why I'm writing this, though you'll never see it. It's my truth, poured out in the stillness before dawn, when even royalty feels human, when even a future queen is just a girl missing someone she once knew better than herself. And if there's ever a place where time folds, where rules fall silent, where two hearts can meet without consequence, I hope I find you there. I hope we speak all the words we never dared say. I'll tell you how you made me feel seen in a world that too often looked through me. I'll thank you for every moment, every memory, every quiet touch that made me feel real. And if you ask me where I've been, I'll smile and say, waiting in the place where we were real.